I am so excited to be here, and I am thrilled that we get to spend some time together today doing something a little bit out of the ordinary. Together, we are going to practice the art of time travel. Not in a time machine, of course, but in our own minds. We're going to practice the art of mental time travel so that we can go somewhere that feels good, to future worlds where we've accomplished some of our most urgent goals and where we've changed some things that really need to change. And we're going to practice the art of mental time travel so that we can become messengers for others here in the present, so we can confidently say, there's some strange things up ahead that we should ready ourselves for, some risks and opportunities to pay attention to. Before we fire up the time machines in our minds, I want to share with you a statistic from my research, a statistic that really stunned me when I first calculated it, that I think helps explain why it's so important that we start to develop a habit of daily mental time travel. So since the start of the year 2020, there have been more than 2.5 million English language news stories and headlines with the word unimaginable in them. And there have been more than 3 million news stories with the word unthinkable. We've all lived through these unimaginable and unthinkable events together, from the pandemic to extreme weather and climate change, shocking political events, new social movements, most recently, a war. And the fact that these two words are so commonplace in the stories that we tell, it speaks to something important about our global condition. Many of us have been in a kind of state of shock, right? We've sometimes felt blindsided by reality. And it's not just that we didn't see all these events coming. There's a sense of grief and anger baked into these two words, right? We say unimaginable to mean heartbreaking. We say unthinkable to mean unacceptable, unforgivable, unjust. These two words speak not just to collective shock, but also to a kind of collective trauma. And to put these numbers in perspective, this is the search results from a LexisNexis timeline for the appearance of these two words in global news, going back all the way to the year 1840. And I can't help but be struck when I look at this by how much our need for these two words, unthinkable and unimaginable, has grown exponentially, almost like the spread of a new global virus. How can we start to feel more ready, more secure, more excited for the future, more capable of creating positive transformation if we're just constantly bracing ourselves for the next unimaginable change or the next unthinkable event? Are we just going to white-knuckle our way to the future? I don't think so. I don't want so, and I believe you're all here this week because you don't want so either. I do believe that there's another option. So I'm the director of game research and development at the Institute for the Future, a nonprofit in Palo Alto, California. And I do research there on what happens in our minds and in our bodies when we try to imagine the far future. And I also create immersive experiences and social games that help us simulate otherwise hard to imagine futures, like pandemics or mass climate migrations, post-capitalist economies fueled by global work strikes. And just to give you a concrete example, I think my biggest claim to fame as a futurist game designer is that back in the year 2010, I was hired by the World Bank to create a simulation of the year 2020. And so the simulation that I designed was centered around a crisis, a new respiratory pandemic that started in China and then led to global supply chain disruptions and was complicated by misinformation and conspiracy theories being spread on social media by a group that I called Citizen X. And that was also further complicated by historic wildfires and heat waves in the United States and Western Europe. And you can bet that when 2020 rolled around, the World Bank was blowing up my phone to see, hey, wait, how did we get all those details right, and what did we learn? So I have spent the last couple of years studying what we learned from a simulation where 20,000 people spent 10 weeks imagining how they would adapt, what they would need, how they would try to help themselves and others dealing with this cascade of crises. And we did find out that many of the things they predicted uncannily were mirrored in otherwise hard to predict social consequences and economic consequences of the pandemic. But more importantly, I've been following up with participants over the last 2 years. And I discovered that people who had participated in this future simulation and had pre-felt and pre-imagined how they would adapt, they did act faster, they did adapt faster, they had a clear plan for what they could do to help others. More importantly, I think they felt less anxiety, less uncertainty, less hopelessness in 2020. And for me, that really validated the idea that we can use the power of games and simulations to ready ourselves for the future and to feel something different about the future than just a state of uncertainty or shock. I was a professional game developer for 10 years before I became trained as a professional futurist. This is not a common career path. As far as I know, I'm the only person who has yet traveled it. But I think it makes a lot of sense, and you can see if you agree. I view my work as both a game developer and as a futurist. My mission is to transport people to worlds that don't exist, right? When I'm designing a game, it's to a virtual world and a computer. When I'm creating future scenarios or simulations, it's to a hypothetical world that could exist someday. And whether it's a game or a future simulation, I want to make it feel believable, realistic, so people can really immerse themselves in the possibilities, discover new challenges, practice their skills and strengths, find new allies, explore different rules for how society might work. And what I've discovered in doing this work is that if we take this kind of gameful approach to imagining the future and giving ourselves the chance to really play with possibilities, even if the futures are a little bit difficult to imagine, they're challenging to think about, that we can move out of the state of kind of collective shock and trauma into something better, into a mindset at the Institute for the Future we call urgent optimism, which is a highly resilient and motivating way of thinking about the future. And it's made up of 3 key psychological strengths that we can measure and we can improve. And those 3 strengths are mental flexibility, realistic hope, and future power. So let me break them down. Mental flexibility. This is the opposite of having a fixed mindset or a stuck mind. It's being open to the possibility that literally anything could change in the future, even things that seem impossible to change today. Realistic hope is having a combination of positive and shadow imagination. It's being aware of growing risks and threats that are important to track and be ready for, but also filling our mind with new positive ideas, new technology, scientific breakthroughs, new social movements, new policy ideas, all of the things that could ready us for those challenges or make a better world, and really keeping that balance of imagination. Future power is a way of increasing our control and agency to impact how the long-term future turns out. And it arises from developing a kind of patience to make decisions and take actions on a longer time scale, on a time scale of at least 10 years. So mental flexibility, realistic hope, future power, this makes up the urgent optimist mindset. And we can all actually get a sense of our own current level of urgent optimism right now by answering 3 quick questions, and I'm going to ask you to do this with me. So on a scale of 1 to 10, when you think about the next 10 years of energy, do you think that things will mostly stay the same and go on as normal? Or do you expect that we will dramatically rethink and reinvent how we do things? So 1 will be almost everything stays the same, and 10 will be almost everything is dramatically different. I want you to hold up your answer on your fingers so I can see them and so the people around you can see them. So if you're a 5, give me a 5, 2, 10. All right, I'm seeing some pretty high numbers over here. 2 hands, everyone's on 2 hands over here. Some 10s, some 9s. I see a 4. You guys are definitely seeing a lot of change coming from being here. I have to tell you, one of my favorite things to do in an event like this, if we had a little more time together, would be to partner up the numbers. Like the 1s can chat with the 10s, and the 2s with the 9s, and the 3s and 4s with the 7s and the 8s, and kind of share our point of view. Like, where do you see all this change coming from? Or why do you think things are going to stay the same? All right, realistic hope. When you think about how the energy industry might change over the next 10 years, are you mostly worried or mostly optimistic or excited? So 1 is extremely worried, and 10 is extremely optimistic or excited. Let me see those numbers again. I got some 9s, some 10s, 8s, high numbers here. A 1, there's my 1. We always need somebody thinking about the shadow side. Okay, great, and take a look around and see what your peers are saying. The last question, future power, how much control or influence do you feel you personally have to help determine how the energy industry changes for yourself and others over the next 10 years? 1 is almost no control or influence. 10 is almost complete control or influence. You are the most powerful person in the room, if not the world. So let's see some numbers. I gotta see. Anybody gonna go for that bold 10 statement in the room? I see a lot of good 7s, 8s, some 5s, some 4s. Take a look around. One of my favorite things to do with this question, if I'm doing a kind of urgent optimism check-in with a team or a group, is to ask people, is there anything you can think of that would +1 your number? So what would have to change in your role at work or in society for you to feel just +1 more able to influence the direction of change? And I find that that can open up some really interesting conversations. Okay, so if you'd like, you could add up your 3 numbers for those 3 questions, and that would give you your current urgent optimism score, something between 3 and 30. I'm at a 22, 23 today, which I tend to hover around in there. So you can go ahead and do that in your mind. What I want you to know is that this is not a diagnostic score. There is no good answer or bad answer. And these numbers fluctuate all the time, depending on what's going on in society and in our lives. And we like to think of this score as a conversation starter. We can use the score in our 3 questions to check in with each other and have really profound conversations about how we're seeing the world, what our mindset is, where we're seeing change, where we have worries, where we find our own power, and how we can share that with others. The other thing I want you to know about urgent optimism is that it's not a fixed personality trait. It's not something you're either born with or born without. It changes often over the course of our lives, and it changes from topic to topic. So if we were to ask those same 3 questions now about the future of food, or the future of learning, or the future of religion, or the future of fashion, right, we would all have totally different scores for different future topics, because really it's not just one future that we're trying to ready ourselves for. It's all sorts of different futures that intersect and shape each other. The other thing that I want to make sure you know about urgent optimism is that when we do want to create change in the world, or we want to be ready for the future, we can build urgent optimism when we want to. We can do a kind of future imagination training, a kind of gameful approach to thinking about the future to build those numbers. And so I'm going to take you through just a few quick imagination training activities today so we can all start to build our urgent optimism. So the first thing we're going to do is a kind of imagination experiment. It's going to take just a couple of minutes, and if you would like to close your eyes while I lead you through this activity, that would be fine. You may find that helpful. Okay, so for the next minute, I want you to imagine as vividly as you can waking up tomorrow morning. Okay? Where are you going to be? Are you here in Calgary? Okay, what bed are you in? Or have you gone home somewhere else? Can you picture what you'll be wearing when you wake up tomorrow morning? Can you picture the temperature in the room? Is it light out or dark out when you wake up? Will you be woke up by an alarm clock, or somebody nudging you, or a cat asking you to be fed? How do you feel? How does your body feel? How's your energy? What emotions are you feeling? What's the first thing that you're going to do when you wake up? Are you reaching for your phone to check social media? Are you drinking a glass of water? What are you doing? So just picture this for about another 20 seconds, as vividly as you can, as if it had already happened, as if you had filmed it in your mind, you're replaying it. Okay, so likely this is pretty easy, right? This is what we call a highly imaginable future. There's just not that much room for change between now and tomorrow morning. It doesn't mean you can predict with certainty, 100% certainty, exactly what will happen tomorrow morning, but your brain has all of the information it needs to at least confidently project one plausible possibility into the future. So highly imaginable. Now we're going to try something a little more difficult. This time, I want you to spend a minute imagining yourself waking up 10 years from today, 10 years from today, and I want you to try to make it as vivid and detailed in your mind as the morning you just imagined. Okay, so let me guide you through some questions to fill in the details. So, waking up 10 years from today, where are you? Is it the same room you expect to wake up tomorrow? Is it a different room? Is it a room you've never been in yet? So where are you going to be? Is there someone else with you, maybe a different person, a different pet than you expect to wake up with tomorrow? Is your body changed in some way 10 years? Does it physically feel different to wake up 10 years from now? How do you feel? How much energy do you have? What emotions do you have when you're waking up 10 years from today? What's the first thing you do? Do you have a habit 10 years from today that maybe you don't have today? What do you have planned for today? Is there something you're looking forward to or excited about? You know, would you rather wake up with a different type of thing on your agenda, or maybe in a different mood than you expect to wake up tomorrow? What would put you in that mood? So keep imagining this as vividly as you can, as if it had already happened and you could rewatch the movie in your mind. So this is a little more challenging, right? Instead of being able to project confidently one possibility, because there's so much room for change between now and 10 years from now, the first thing that happens is that our brain draws a blank, right? And we have to consciously choose what details to fill this future in with. It's not just drawing on what we already know or what we remember about the past. Now there's an opportunity to fill in that blank slate with what we choose to imagine. This is difficult. It takes more mental energy, more creative energy, more emotional energy than just trying to imagine tomorrow or next week or next month. But it's because of that strain, that creative stretching, that makes this form of imagination so powerful. And you may have even felt this. It is like kind of reaching for something that isn't there. And when you do this activity, something kind of amazing happens. What was previously literally unimaginable to your brain is now literally become imaginable. The next time you try to imagine yourself waking up 10 years from today, you will have a specific memory that you can draw on, something you can bring back to life in your mind, and then you can use that memory of the future to make decisions and plan or look for motivation. You know, what was it about that morning that made me want to wake up in that future? Should I change what I'm doing today to make that future more or less likely? And as you imagine these things that you've literally never imagined before, you do form new neurological pathways, right? To bake in this idea, to bake in this information into your brain. This activity is what researchers refer to as mental time travel. It is different from just thinking about the future. So we're not just thinking about abstract facts like 10 years from now, there'll be more extreme heat, right? When we do mental time travel, we project ourselves into this future, taking our own hopes and values and needs and personal strengths and our cares, and we go there as if it were a game world, a virtual world that we could walk around and really feel what do I do here? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? So you might think of the difference between just thinking about the future and mental time travel as the difference between seeing a weather forecast. It's going to rain next weekend. And vividly projecting yourself into that day next weekend and imagining, okay, how am I going to feel? Am I going to be excited about the rain? Like, yes, the drought's over. Am I going to be annoyed because I was supposed to have a picnic or an outdoor event? How will it feel when the rain hits my skin? Did I remember my umbrella? Do I walk leisurely through the rain, or do I rush through it? And we try to have this pre-experience, this pre-feeling, using our own knowledge of ourselves, of our lives, of our bodies, of our goals, of our relationships. Now, mental time travel is not an escapist fantasy. We don't go to just, whatever future we can make up, a beautiful world where everything is amazing and our problems have been solved. As professional futurists, we try to practice mental time travel to scenarios that are based on real signals of change, things that are already happening today, maybe at a local scale or a small scale, but they could become more significant, more widespread, more commonplace. And we try to decide what worlds to visit based on drivers of change. What are the big social shifts, political shifts, economic shifts, environmental shifts that make it more likely we will wind up in a particular type of future? So it's not a way of escaping reality, right? It's a way of playing with reality to discover new risks, new opportunities, and new possibilities. One of the most interesting things about mental time travel is that when we go to these far-off futures, the kinds of actions that we imagine taking, they tend to be tied very closely to our most important, essential, authentic goals and values. And the reason for this is that while today we might have a packed calendar with things that maybe we want to do some of them, maybe we have to do some of them, or somebody else has put them on our to-do list, when we are imagining 10 years from now, there is literally nothing on our to-do list. Most of us will agree there's nothing on our calendar for 10 years from today. So we have all of this free space to play with. We can fill in those blanks. And the things that we tend to fill in our futures with are the things that are truest to ourselves and the kinds of actions and values that make us feel like we're living a meaningful or purposeful life. And because mental time travel allows us to really pre-feel experiences, we can use that feeling, that sense of really having been there, to ask 3 important questions. Is this a world I want to wake up in? Let me really feel it for myself. What do I need to do today to be ready for this world? And should I try to change what I'm doing today to make this future more or less likely? Always we ask these 3 questions no matter what future we travel to. Another fun fact about mental time travel is that there have been more than 5,000 peer-reviewed scientific studies on the topic over the past decade, mostly by neuroscientists and psychologists. And you may wonder, why are neuroscientists and psychologists so interested in mental time travel? For 3 reasons. The first is that mental time travel is strongly linked with mental well-being. People who practice this regularly, ideally daily habit for just a few minutes a day, they tend to experience fewer symptoms of anxiety and depression, and they tend to report feeling more confident and more in control of their futures. Why is that? Well, studies show that people with symptoms of depression tend to have a hard time imagining the future. The near future, the far future, it shows up in their minds as almost like a blank slate. And they can't mentally fill in those details, like we were just doing in our imagination exercise. Trying to imagine tomorrow feels as blank of a slate as trying to imagine 10 years out. And because of this, their brain can't motivate them in the same way, right? We need compelling, believable images of positive events to motivate ourselves to take action, to get out in the world and do hard things. And because they can't envision the future, they also have a hard time convincing themselves that something better is possible. People with anxiety have the opposite problem. People with anxiety tend to have extremely vivid, specific future imaginings, but they forget that step where they choose what to imagine, right? And so they get stuck on imagining all the things that could go wrong, all the things that are worrisome or scary to us. And practicing mental time travel can help both of these groups because it teaches us to control our imagination, and particularly how we imagine the future. It can teach us to fill in the blanks with vivid, specific details that motivate us, excite us, inspire us. And it can teach us to fill in the blanks with actions we can take to really impact how we're experiencing the world, to achieve our goals, and to focus on those values and goals that help us do things that are hard for us. Another reason why scientists love to study it is that it's a highly effective tool for behavior change. So people who have a regular habit of mental time travel are more likely to stick with resolutions to change, eat healthier foods, exercise more, vote in elections more often, make sustainable purchasing choices, save money for the future, for retirement or future goals. Why is this? Well, in order to take any of these actions, what we're really doing is we're making an effort today or sacrificing something today for a long-term benefit. And to do that, we have to feel empathy for our future selves. We have to feel connected to our future selves. Mental time travel helps us spend time with who we might be 5, 10 years from now. So it becomes easier to do things that are a little bit harder today to benefit that person in the future. And finally, scientists are fascinated by mental time travel because it seems to increase creativity. So when scientists try to study creativity in the lab, even if they're not studying mental time travel, they will often use an imagination exercise like the one you just did, imagine yourself waking up 10 years from now, in order to provoke a creative mindset. It's just such an efficient way to do it. And so they'll ask people questions like, imagine yourself taking a walk on a beach with a friend a year from now. Where are you going? Who are you with? What are you talking about? Imagine it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and so on. And it turns out that the further you go out in time, up to 30 years, the more creativity it provokes. Once you get to 30 years, most people's brains kind of give up and say, wait, literally, I have no information to imagine that. So you don't want to push yourself out too far. But it can put you in that creative mindset where, again, you're not drawing on the facts of the past, you're not relying on the patterns of the present, but you're filling in the details of a possible future with new ideas and possibilities. So for all of these reasons, practicing mental time travel as a kind of daily habit, it has benefits for ourselves. It can change how we feel for the better, it can change our behavior and our skill set, but I think more importantly, it can create change in our communities, in our organizations, when we do mental time travel together. So we can do mental time travel together by all picking the same destination to go to, like in a simulation where we all try to imagine the disruptions we might face 10 years in the future. The way we practice this is we have to create opportunities to come together. So I want to give you 2 quick examples of social time travel that you can do. This is a challenge I have for you to do this week. I really want you to give this a try. Of all the things I've ever told people to do from a keynote stage, this is the one I've gotten the most positive feedback about after. So I want you to open up whatever digital calendar you use, so it's Apple Calendar, Google Calendar, and I want you to go forward 10 years in the calendar, which it does go that far out, and I want you to put something on your personal calendar or your work calendar for September 22nd, 2032. And I want you to put something on your calendar for 10 years from today that would be an exciting thing for you to wake up to. It could be a trip, it could be a conference, it could be a new client kickoff project, whatever you can imagine. It could be a party, a festival, a monument unveiling, a protest that you're leading, whatever you would like to put on your calendar. Open it up, click on it, write it down, put some details, and here's the important part. I want you to invite a few other people to this event 10 years from now, okay? This sounds really weird. People will be surprised, but the conversations that you will get to have about why you're putting this on your calendar and what it means to you, just trust me, there's a little bit of magic in this activity. So you can take a mental time trip with whoever you invite. Also, you can just start to play with scenarios. I run a scenario club for the Institute for the Future, where every month we meet up to discuss a different future scenario and to imagine what we would do, how we would help others in this future. So here's some examples of future scenarios we're playing with. All you have to do is just search for the Institute for the Future. Come join our scenario club. It's like a book club, except instead of discussing books, we discuss scenarios. Scenarios like a world in which food is medicine and fresh produce is free for all. A world in which central bank digital currencies completely replace cash and all transactions are traceable by the government. Public high school is replaced by public service. A world in which there is no minimum voting age, kids can vote. A world in which co-ops employ more people than corporations, kind of a post-capitalist economy. A world in which we face a new tick-borne pandemic. Sorry, I know it's hard to think about another pandemic already. And my favorite scenario that we're playing with, a world in which welcome cities and nations are working together to safely and equitably move hundreds of millions of people to safer, more resilient climates and build up our climate-resilient cities. These worlds may sound unthinkable or unimaginable to you today, but we have a saying at the Institute for the Future. It's painted right on our front window if you were to visit us. Any useful statement about the future should at first seem ridiculous. We're trying to train our minds to be open to previously unimaginable change or previously unthinkable disruption so that we can be ready for anything. We can't say for sure what the future will be, except for one thing: it will definitely be different. So we need to be ready, and more than just being ready, we can become the ones who decide how the future will be different, using our voices, using our actions, mobilizing our communities. And as we've proven with our own imaginations, the future really is a place where anything can be different, even things that seem impossible to change today. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this exciting energy summit, and I hope that you will imagine the future again with me. Thank you.